welcome. Um, let's get some of the updates. Is the US and Iran about to reach a deal? We will talk about that as well during the course of this conversation. For those of you just joining me, welcome. Let's talk about the recent development in relations to what is going on in terms of the negotiations between the United States and Iran happening in Oman. So Oman have decided to be the broker. Initially, these talks were supposed to happen in Turkey, and then the Iranians decided against it and said, hang on a second, we want to have it in Oman. We have seen before that sometimes they want to have conversation in some of the rooms, and either the rooms are bugged or they even sometimes they assassinate the negotiators. We saw that the Israelis did that we saw that the Israelis did that in an attempt to sabotage the negotiations, and they did that recently in Qatar. So whatever reason or whatever the rationale is for the Iranians making a decision to take the conversation elsewhere outside Turkey is what we're also trying to look at. So according to the head of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization in Tehran, he said that Iran could consider diluting its stockpile of uranium and reach to 60%, meaning that they can reduce their stockpiles to 60% and reduce the threshold of what they currently have to meet the IAEA regulations. Now, and this is according to, that means that Iran is going to go back to the JCPOA without America necessarily signing up to it. Even going beyond that. So Iran is going back to the model of the JCPOA that President Trump initially, look, the point is, why are we here at this point in time? If all America did was to do a giant show, the Iranians did was to give a giant show, and then we're going to go back to what President Obama agreed in 2015. But the other part of it, which the Israelis say they don't like, is the fact that inside that agreement, there was no place where Iran was to scale back on its ballistic missile program. So according to Mohammed Eslami, who is the head of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization, he said that Iran could consider diluting some of its stockpile of uranium to about 60% of all, if all the sanctions on it are lifted. So meaning that if the Americans are willing to lift the sanctions, that Iran does not have any problem with reducing the stockpile, and the US also said, this was according to President Trump, he also said earlier that, look, the Iranians are enriching uranium beyond the threshold, agreed with the IAEA, meaning that President Trump and the United States of America want Iran to continue to conform with the regulations of the International Atomic Energy Agency without any sort of agreement. They want Iran to hold their own side of the bargain without the US getting involved in any of it. And the Israelis were able to achieve what they've been looking for, to sort of start up the conflict in the region by bombing Iran, and Iran, looking, say, hang on a second, we're going to retaliate. If the Israelis can come to our country and unalive people and just send agents on the ground to do this every single time. And we also saw that with the assassination of the leader of Al-Quds forces, one of their leaders in Syria. So this is not the first time, it's not the second time. They've done this over and over again. Just imagine Iran not doing anything and their agents are being attacked and unalived, in different places. That sort of sends a signal to, the rest of the world that Iran is weak. And if they do that one time and succeed, they'll do it over and over again. So this is part of the conversation I hope we can have today. For those of you just joining, you're welcome to this live stream. So according to the head of the Iranian Atomic Energy Agency, Mohammed Eslami, he said that Iran is willing to dilute their stockpile of uranium and reach to 60%. Remember that President Trump also stated clearly that Iran was trying to build new sites after the attack during the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, that they're trying to build new sites outside Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, where they have some of these underground tunnels where they kept some of their nuclear materials. So this is also part of it. So in other international news, we're also going to look at what is happening around the world, and I'm going to share my my screen with you, and we're going to look at multiple sources in terms of during the course of our conversation today. So if you're just joining, you're welcome. I'm going to take this off now and let's say remove. So you can see my full background. So we're having this conversation today, being the 10th of February 2026. And we are trying to look at what is happening on the international stage. What on earth is going on? What would the Americans do, going forward in relations to what is going on between Russia and Ukraine, what is going on in the Middle East, and what is even going on in America with ICE. Now, one of the sources I use as well is to look at the Russian perspective of what they perceive is going on the international stage. We're going to look at what the British perception is. We're going to look at what the American perception is. And the best way to look at this and to know this better is by using their own sources. So we're going to look at what the Russians are saying in terms of the international happenings. So we are going to look at this step by step. So what are the Russians thinking? What do they think about what is going on today on the international stage? 1 second. I think I should be able to. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to hold this up. Let's drag this here. Okay. You ready? Yeah, I think it's better like this. So let's look at what is being said by the Russians. So why didn't China protect Venezuela from the US? A lot of people, this is part of the question they're asking. That this is according to RT, but most of this is from RT, and they're saying that why didn't China protect Venezuela from the US? Now Beijing is responding to adapt to the new hemispheric world order, but not retreating from Latin America. Now, if you look at China's model, China is trying to find their way around some of this by sort of playing the economic game and playing the long-term game. I had a conversation yesterday on another platform, and we discussed extensively about the Chinese model and what China is doing, building all these ports. So China is building all these ports where people think these are civilian ports for civilian purposes, and that China have no intention of militarization. But if you look at most of these ports, they are built as part of the One Belt, One Road initiative, which was resuscitated by Xi Jinping when he came to power in 2013. Most of these ports they are built, what is the purpose of it? Is it for economic reasons? Is it for transportation? Most of these ports, based on the agreement signed, and both based on the specification and the models of these ports, can easily be converted into military bases. So we're talking about China having just one military outpost, which is in Djibouti. There's a possibility that can translate to 200 military outposts in no time, from 1 to 200 if push comes to shove. And China, if you look at most of the Chinese vessels that they are using for transportation in terms of goods and services, all of them can be converted to warships and aircraft carriers. This is the model of China. So the question most people are asking is, why did China not intervene to save their ally and friend in Nicolas Maduro? So and according to RC, what they're saying is that the US military intervention in Venezuela in January 2026, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, sent shockwaves beyond Caracas by striking targets in the Venezuelan capital and capturing the president Nicolas Maduro. Washington signaled a decisive return to hard power in the Western Hemisphere. Now, this operation was not merely a tactical move against a hostile regime. It was a strategic message about influence, hierarchy, and control in the Americas for China, which has invested heavily in Venezuela's political and economic survival. Now, the intervention raised immediate questions about the limits of its global reach and the evolving rules of the great power competition in increasingly multipolar order. This is also creating some sort of schism or some sort of political upheaval in China, because the Chinese political system, think about the mafia, think about the rules and the spoken rules and the unspoken rules, within the mafia. The Chinese system is not democratic in a sense where you say, okay, there are established rules of, dealings that after every 5 years or 10 years, I mean, the Chinese system have that, of course. I think after Deng Xiaoping, he set up a model. But what has happened after that period as well is that when leaders come to power, they have their own ideas. And we saw the Xi Jinping when Hu Jintao was in power, he spent the required amount of time, and then the structure, which is the CCP or the Communist Party of China, the some sort of arrangement where you have power transfer to the new crop of leaders, including with Xi Jinping becoming the leader. In fact, I followed that You know, I followed, that incident closely, and you could see what was going on, the power play that happened. In fact, there's this Chinese guy called Bo Xilai at that point in time that the people believe was going to be occupy a very top position because he's performed very well, working from the grassroots upwards. He was a former leader in Dalian, and then they posted him to Chongqing, and he was able to transform the economies of this. I think one of them, the province of Chongqing, and then there's the city of Dalian, which was polluted, and he cleaned it up. So the guy have pedigree behind him. So the point I'm making here is that the Chinese have always have their own model of transition of leadership. But what this current leader have done is that he has moved that model beyond, just having a normal agreement to extending his term limit. And most of the people in China and some of the elites in China, some of the think tank, their position is that that he doesn't want to be president for life, that the purpose of extending his term limit is for the fact that Chinese system became very predictable, and that during the last days of Hu Jintao, he could not follow through on some of his policies and programs because he was seen as a political lame duck. And because he was seen as a political lame duck, because even in the US, you have that after the president serves his first term, he has people that don't agree with some of his policies. It's easier for him to implement his policies, during his first term than his second term when they will consider him a political lame duck. Because at that point in time, they'll be waiting for him to exit the scene, and it will be very difficult for him to implement some of his policies. And that was what they saw about Hu Jintao. And that Xi Jinping removing the term limit made sure that the possibility of being a political lame duck was completely stripped away. So the China have their own model. And going back to what I said about now the power play in China, where you have some of the top military leaders, including the top military guy in China. No matter what you think about the powers of Xi Jinping, he's not a military guy. He's not part of the military establishment. He didn't serve in the army. So he is a bureaucrat that worked his way from the bottom to the top. And the military establishment, the power there is very difficult. So most of the people he appointed close to the very top of power during the time period, I think around last year, where he was, it was rumored that he had cancer, or some said he had some sort of stroke and he was not feeling well. There were a lot of changes that were made that purged most of his loyalists that he promoted. So a lot of people were like, what is going on? Is the target Xi Jinping? And is he going to hold on, for that time period? Because they saw what was going on. And it seems like General Jiang Qiujia, was working with the old guard or the ancient regime, with people, the former premier Wen Jiabao believed to be in his camp, and a host of other people that were not really satisfied with what the Chinese president Xi Jinping was doing at and also in relation to even the foreign minister that died mysteriously. There were a host of things, and because the Chinese politics and system is closed, a lot of people in the West don't have any idea. Most of them, if you ask them today, they don't know what the structure is. They don't know about the bureaucracy in China and the seats in the Politburo and so on and so forth. And they don't even make any effort to learn about it. And this is why when people, analysts like that, and I'm talking about from even college level to think tanks, to elites, to political elites, to political figures in America, this is not something they really care about. Okay? And because they find it very difficult to understand and sort of, analyze Chinese politics, they take a very rigid position and just throw out the concept of democracy, that the Chinese system is absolutely rubbish because it's not democratic. It is democratic in its own way, okay? You could argue that it's democratic centralism. You could argue that it is based on meritocracy, but there is some level of consultation at every level you go. So it's not, painted in black and white that, the Chinese model, we cannot accept it because it's not democratic and people don't go to the ballot to choose their leaders. It has a process. There's a process to the madness, if you like. But let's look at the fact that people are now saying, why didn't China intervene in Venezuela to take on the United States of America? No country on earth can do that with America in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere. It's very difficult. How many countries on earth have the sort of alliance that the United States have built, or have the expeditionary ability? You need to understand. No, most countries in the world, the most powerful ones, Russia, China, France. None of them have the expeditionary capability to take on any country in that region, not let alone the United States of America, and go there and fight to win the United States in their own backyard. And people look at the war between Russia and Ukraine. The reason why it's proving very difficult for the Europeans, don't have anything. The Europeans don't have the manpower. They cannot fight. They are lazy, and their own politics is also constraining them in some sense. And so they can't really do anything. The only country that can stand up to Russia, more or less, could be France. But again, the politics of France we also have to discuss, and how Russia can also bleed them in Africa. So there's so many layers to this that you guys must understand. So the only country that is now doing that to help Ukraine is the United States of America. But now this is a logistic war. So if America is going to send, let's say, 200 tons of hard metal, of hardware to Ukraine, and it's going to take 1 year to do so, it will take the Russians 2 months to do so because of the proximity to the front line. So this is also a logistic war. Russia, what can America really do to persuade Russia to stop fighting at this point in time? They don't have too much leverage. The economic sanctions are there. They try to force India not to buy oil. The Americans have to settle for some sort of deal with India. And then the Indians are not even saying anything. Trump said, yes, they are no longer going to buy Russian oil. Well, the Indians have not said that. They are still buying oil from Russia, in spite of the deal they did with the United States to make Trump look good. But they're still buying oil. They might cut back on the amount of supply of Russian oil which they're buying. India is buying an enormous amount of cheap Russian oil, and China is also doing the same. So what sort of leverage does the United States of America have on any of these countries at this point? Now they've taken over the Venezuelan oil. Venezuelan oil, most people don't have a lot of sulfuric content to it, so it requires a lot of money to sort of refine. China is buying it because it's very cheap. They buy it and use it for their industries. So China needs energy, and they need energy, sustainable energy that cannot be impeded. So the US now taking over the Venezuelan oil field and then telling China, now you can come and buy. So it doesn't make any sense. So this is sort of the power play that is going on. And it would be stupid and dumb. And again, back to our topic of why did China not help Venezuela? To be stupid and dumb for the United States to go into Venezuela, for instance, and to put up the military there to try to fight off the United States of America. It's dumb. And the same way China is building up their capacity in the Pacific. And this is very important. This is why countries like Australia, Philippines, they are trying to use them to gang up against China. And as we speak right now, Japan is building a lot of underground networks and tunnel systems because they know that war is coming. So China have a peculiar problem. And China's peculiar problem is their own sphere of influence. It's Asia Pacific. And China wants to dominate that area. And there's a lot of roadblocks, including the Strait of Malacca, including the issue with Taiwan. TMC is already relocating most of their manufacturing base from Taiwan because they know that an attack, maybe it could be 2025, 2027, an attack on them is imminent. It's possible that it could happen anytime soon. So China's response to Operation Absolute Resolve was swift in tone, but cautious in substance. Meaning that, people were expecting China to go in guns blazing, fly in some of their J-10C or whatever, and just attack America and bomb Washington D.C. to sort of force the Americans to position where they would negotiate or whatever. That's not going to happen. America knows that. China would never get involved in it. So, yet the rhetoric was not matched by escalation. Beijing avoided threats of retaliation or offers of direct military assistance to Caracas. Instead, it confined its response to diplomatic channels, reaffirmed position to unilateral sanctions, and issued travel advisory warning Chinese citizens to avoid Venezuela amid heightened instability. Now, Chinese analysts emphasized that the priority was damage control, protecting long-standing economic and strategic interests without provoking a direct confrontation with the United States military power in the Western Hemisphere. Well, people think it's on the long run, people will lose trust and faith in China, and it was not the right thing to do. But I also think that, look, maybe the Chinese are playing the game in a way and manner that will serve their long-term purpose and ambition, if you like. And this is what it is at this point. So this brings us back to Iran. If China did not intervene, people are saying if China did not intervene in Venezuela to help Venezuela, what about Iran? Well, if you look at the, in terms of comparative analysis, you look at the proximity from China to the Americas, for instance, it's not going to be the same as from China to Iran. Now, again, there might be a lot of logistical challenges in order to get supplies to Iran and so on and so forth. And we can talk about that and how Pakistan can be of help or hindrance if that is the case. But the US going to Iran will also be met with a lot of issues. So this brings me to my point about what is going on in the Middle East today with Iran. And this is a conversation that I believe that we need to have. For those of you just joining, thank you so much for the likes. Thank you for the comments. I appreciate those of you always standing by and listening to our conversation and sharing the stream. I see you. It means a lot to my broadcast that you're always staying and supporting, even if you are offended or you're not. Thank you always for standing by. So let's talk about what is going on in the Middle East. The report is that the Middle East is on the brink of war. The US and Iran talks may be the last chance for peace. And as we know, the talks are going on like some sort of marathon, going on non-stop. As war clouds gather over Iran, will Hezbollah and the Houthis step up in the defense of Tehran? No, so this is the conversation that we are about to have today. What is the real game being played here? Are they going to, are we going to see the United States of America coming in guns blazing, try to destroy Iran and using the Venezuela model? Okay, so let's get this. Would they use the Venezuela model? Because a lot of people are saying, yeah, there's a possibility that the United States of America will go in guns blazing, bomb Iran, take out the supreme leader, take out the IRGC, and leave the country to deal with whatever mess or whatever chaos, that it will create as a result of that. I don't think that will be the option. But the thing is that bombing Iran is not going to be like Venezuela. If you take out the supreme leader of Iran, you need to understand that Venezuelan model will not work. If you take out the supreme leader of Iran, not only is he seen as the spiritual leader in Iran, he's been seen as a spiritual leader among Shias in Lebanon. He's seen as a spiritual leader among Shias in Bahrain. He's seen as a spiritual leader within Shia community in Saudi Arabia, which chunk of Shias living in Saudi Arabia, by the way, I don't know, the number could be between 25 to 33% of Saudis are Shia. On the border with Yemen and also on their border with Iran, there's a lot of Shia population that live there. The same thing you can argue about Oman, where you have a lot of Ibadi, Ibadis who are also an offshoot of Shiaism. In Syria, you have the Alawites, albeit Assad has been removed. And in Iraq, which is the elephant in the room, you have majority of them, over 60% of them, Shias. And at this point in time, the reason why the escalation is even more pronounced is because there's a vacuum of power or some sort of power challenges in Iraq, because the parliament have nominated the former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to come back as a Prime Minister, and the Americans are saying they are not happy with it. Make that make sense to me. The Americans are saying they are not happy that the caucus, within the parliament, had nominated Nouri al-Maliki to become prime minister. This happened before under George W. Bush. The influence of the Americans on the Iraqi system is crazy. They did that under George W. Bush, where you have, I think it was Ibrahim Jaffrey, had been nominated in this sense because within the Shia caucus, he's won with one vote, and the Americans wanted, I think, Ayad Alawi, who had earlier served, as prime minister, but didn't have enough of the support. And one of the arguments that they made is that the Muqtada al-Sadr people had supported Ibrahim Jaffrey, and this was how they now accepted the choice of Nouri al-Maliki. Nouri al-Maliki, by the way, is very educated. He's a seasoned politician. He's been there before. He was there during the difficult days of Iraq, during the attack by ISIS and whatever happened, in Iraq at that point in time. So that also have created a power vacuum in a sense. So if Iran is attacked and bombed from the sky and they take out the supreme leader of Iran, who's also seen as one of the top spiritual leaders within Shiaism, including Sistani. And then you have the Popular Mobilization Forces, or the Hashd al-Shaabi there. That will ignite a sectarian war in the region, because the way they'll see it is that this has been coming, that the Saudis and the Egyptians and other countries around them have been playing the sectarian card to encourage the Americans to come and destroy them. And that is not just going to be the case. Those American bases around the region are within firing range. It's very easy. I saw some analysts in Iran saying, hang on a second, why do we have to target Israel? Well, the Israelis will depend on whatever is remaining of Hezbollah and the Houthis to help us contain them. And then we can target those American bases in those Arab Sunni countries, quote unquote, in the region, and ignite something bigger, and ignite some sort of regional war, which is going to set the whole area ablaze. So this is the point I'm making. Thank you so much, guys, for the comments. Thank you for the shares. This is the conversation we're having today. It's about what is going on in the Middle East. It's about the issue with Iran. And so another round of talks between the US and Iran is expected to be held in the upcoming days, with regional allies on the edge and militant groups warning of escalation. The outcome of these negotiations could determine whether diplomacy holds or whether the Middle East slides up towards a broader war. Now, what's at stake in the new round of the US-Iran talks? Iran and the representatives of the Trump administration are expected to hold another round of talks in the upcoming days. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said on Friday that the announcement follows a 6-hour marathon of talks in Muscat, which is in Oman, the capital of Oman, where Araghchi, which met with Jared Kushner, US President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Steve Witkoff. And it's funny that Jared Kushner holds no official position, but the guy is like the most important and the most powerful guy. Any assignment that they send Jared Kushner to, it shows a level of premium of importance. Sending them to mediate in the Russia-Ukraine. This guy holds no official position, for your information. What is the official position of Jared Kushner? Absolutely none. And then when the most important things to the US president, he's sending his son-in-law Jared Kushner to do. And we also saw that with the Abraham Accords, which is the architect basically. And I'm talking about the Gaza Council, or Gaza Council, or the Gaza Peace Council. Is also the architect behind it. The idea to rebuild Gaza and the contract that is going to come out of it, Jared Kushner. So everything is going through him. He's the one that is helping the Trump, administration to sort of, he's trying to, do that. Now, the venue for the next round has yet to be finalized. Oman has been replaced by another Gulf country, or possibly Turkey, but the focus of the discussion is expected to remain unchanged. Iran's military capabilities. At the center of the agenda is Tehran's nuclear. Iran insists is designed solely for civilian energy and research purposes. While that is going on, still putting sanctions on Iran. Iran is probably or possibly the most sanctioned country on earth at this point, alongside the likes of Russia, alongside the likes of North Korea, and so on, and Zimbabwe at some point. It's crazy. So this is the game, guys. This is what the West is doing at point in time. So for those of you just joining, you're welcome to the live stream. I'm streaming on all platforms. Don't forget to like and share. So I wanted to give you guys some update on what is happening. So in other news, let's see what else is going on the international stage. Let's not forget that the Russia-China alliance is getting stronger. And also, a few other things we need to discuss. EU needs to win itself of Visa and MasterCard banking. Let's go to the UK. Yeah, apart from that, there are also other updates. Ukraine to launch arms exports. Ukraine is trying to build their own military industrial complex where they will export arms. I mean, think about it. Ukraine have benefited what from this war, rather than having someone else understanding about technology, and they're trying to build their own military industrial complex to export to other countries, while depending on America to send it imports. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. Have Epstein sexual really been punished enough? Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for participating in this round of conversation about what is going on. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. Um, I do this almost every day. So thank you for participating in this round of conversation on YouTube and on Facebook and on X. We are available on all platforms. Thank you so much for